thee, old apple tree, whence thou must bud, and whence thou must bear apples enow. Hats full, caps full, bushel, bushel, sacks full, and my pockets full too. Huzzah, huzzah! People have been growing apples and making cider at this very site in the Focke Valley for many years. Although we still practice old traditions like wassailing, we have the benefits of modern cider making methods to help us with our production. We're currently farming 15 acres, 4,500 trees. We started planting in 1998. With Dabinet and Michelin varieties, and then we followed that with a few Bramley, which is good for acidity and blending. We've just finished our 2010 harvest, which started in mid-September and finished in mid-November, so about 2 months. We've harvested 130 tonnes approximately, which is 39% up on last year. So we've been investing heavily in machinery to automate the process and cope with the amount of apples that we have. The trees are planted in a specific way to maximise the yield of the land, and also so that we can use machinery to fit between the rows and to sweep the apples and to shake the apples. As the fruit starts to ripen, we keep a close eye on how ripe the fruit is. It's very important to get the fruit off the trees at just the right moment, so we get the maximum amount of sugar in the fruit and not so much starch. So we'll be firstly shaking the trees so the apples are on the ground. And then we sweep them into rows to make it easier for the harvester to pick up the apples into boxes. Although we're producing quite high volumes of cider now, we are very much artisan cider makers. We're using orchards that are surrounding the farm, bringing all the fruit in here, making ciders from 100% apple juice, and keeping a very close monitoring system on the cider, being able to have a very personal contact with it. It's not a big industrial process, and so that is something that I think craft cider making is where we would position ourselves. Once the apples are harvested into boxes, we can bring them back to the processing area and load the boxes into a bin tipper as the first part of the process. The boxes are then tipped onto a conveyor belt where one man can operate the complete system of pressing and collecting the juice. The apples pass along the conveyor belt onto a spring coil cleaner where they are cleaned dry. This removes the weeds, stones that are harvested from the floor, and the operator can grade out the rotten apples. From the spring coil cleaner, the apples pass into the water where they are washed and then drawn up via auger into the wash mill and then milled to a pulp. The pulp is dropped into the top of a new press that we purchase, which is a belt press, which can run continually around a series of rollers. Each time the apple pulp passes around a roller, the juice is extracted into trays beneath, and the juice is then pumped to the vats directly for fermentation. The waste apple pulp from the mill is removed from the processing area via elevator to a waiting farm trailer, which can take about 7 tons, and the pulp is fed to beef cattle and pigs. We have 20 hives spread throughout the orchards, which is really important so that we've got the bees to do the pollination work of the trees, and we notice we get a large increase in crop with the bees present. The new equipment that we're putting in, CIP system, cleaning in position, which enables us to clean these tanks. There's the carbonator, sterile filters, keg filling equipment, the keg washing equipment, the CO2 system over there. All this will enable us to fill these kegs on the island. We have about 96,000 litres capacity for juice in fiberglass tanks. In this tank here we can do the blending. So out of all the tanks in this room, there may be tanks which are older than other tanks, tanks which have taken on different characters throughout the fermentation and have different levels of acidity or alcohol levels, and we can select by testing each of the tanks which ones we want to use to make up our blend. And we can use this tank to make up different amounts. We've got the gauge on the side here, so we know how much we're putting in. We're always trying to produce a product which is consistent, which is quite difficult to do. These are not chemically produced ciders, they're natural ciders. They do take on different characters. So we're constantly monitoring the ciders and trying to decide which ones are going to be used in what way to make sure that the Rocquette brew is what people expect it to be.
Now is to the spirit